The conference room overlooked the harbor, gray water, gray sky, gray faces. I arrived 10 minutes early, but my family was already there. My parents sat together at the long oak table. My older sister, Vanessa, was scrolling through her phone. My uncle and aunt whispered to each other in the corner. No one greeted me. That wasn't surprising. For most of my life, I had been the invisible one. Vanessa was the successful daughter, the golden child, the one everyone praised. I was simply Ethan, the son who moved away, the son who never seemed good enough, the son they assumed Grandma Eleanor had forgotten. The door opened. A tall man in a navy suit entered carrying several folders. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm attorney Michael Graves. Thank you all for coming." Everyone straightened. This was why they were here. Not for Grandma, for her estate. Grandma had passed away 3 weeks earlier at 87. The funeral had barely ended before conversations about inheritance began. I hated that. She deserved better. Attorney Graves opened a file. "As requested by Mrs. Eleanor Carter, we will begin with the reading of her will." Vanessa smiled. A confident smile. The kind worn by people who already think they've won. The attorney began reading. A collection of jewelry to an aunt. Several charitable donations, family heirlooms, small financial gifts. The room remained calm. Then he reached the section everyone had been waiting for. "The family residence and primary investment shall transfer according to the instructions outlined as Schedule A." Vanessa leaned forward. My father smiled. My mother squeezed his hand. Attorney Graves opened another document. "The family residence shall transfer to Vanessa Carter." Vanessa let out a satisfied breath. My parents exchanged proud looks. Then the attorney continued. "The remaining investment accounts shall be distributed as outlined in supplemental documentation." Vanessa laughed softly. "There it is." Nobody said anything. She looked directly at me. Her smile widened. "You get nothing." The words landed harder than they should have. Not because of money. Because they sounded familiar. They sounded like every family dinner, every comparison, every criticism, every reminder that I wasn't enough. "You get nothing," she repeated. My mother didn't correct her. My father didn't defend me. They never did. I simply sat there, quiet. Attorney Graves adjusted his glasses. "Miss Carter, I would suggest waiting until I finish." Vanessa waved her hand dismissively. "What difference does it make?" The attorney looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached for a thick black folder resting beneath the others. A folder nobody had seen before. "Actually," he said calmly, "it makes a considerable difference." The room became silent. He placed the folder on the table. "My client instructed me to open this only after the initial reading." Vanessa's smile faded slightly. "What is that?" "The final folder." He opened it. Inside were dozens of documents, signed, stamped, organized. Very organized. My grandmother had always been meticulous. Attorney Graves removed a handwritten letter. This was written by Mrs. Carter 6 months before her death. He began reading. "My dear family, if Michael is reading this letter, then I am gone. I hope you remember me for more than what I owned. I hope you remember the woman behind the bank accounts." The room remained completely still. The attorney continued. "For years I listened carefully. I heard conversations about my investments, my house, my savings, what each person expected to receive. Very few people asked how I was feeling." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. My father looked down. Then came my name. "Ethan, you never asked me for money. You never asked about inheritance. You called every Sunday. You faced things around my house without being asked. You sat with me after your grandfather died when everyone else was too busy." I swallowed hard. I hadn't known she remembered all that. Attorney Graves continued. "Vanessa visited often, but most conversations eventually turned toward assets, property, future plans, inheritance." Vanessa's face turned red. "This is ridiculous. Please do not interrupt," the attorney said. Then he reached the final paragraph. 3 years ago, I created the Carter Family Trust. I transferred nearly all financial assets into that trust. The sole beneficiary is Ethan Carter. Silence, absolute silence. Vanessa stared. My mother blinked repeatedly. My father looked frozen. I thought I had misheard. Attorney Graves did not pause. The trust currently contains investment holdings valued at approximately $4 million. Nobergs. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Vanessa finally found her voice. No. The word came out as a whisper. No. Attorney Graves placed several documents on the table. These are the trust agreements. She grabbed them. Flipped pages. Read signatures, dates, witness statements. Everything was legitimate. Everything was legal. Everything had been completed years earlier. You manipulated her, Vanessa said, pointing at me. I almost laughed. It was the same accusation people always used when they couldn't accept reality. I barely knew about the trust. You're lying. No, Attorney Graves said calmly. He's not. Vanessa looked ready to explode. My father finally spoke. Why would Mom do this? The attorney opened another document. A personal statement. He read aloud. Because Ethan loved me when there was nothing to gain. Because he treated me like family instead of an opportunity. Because character matters. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Vanessa slammed her hand against the table. This isn't fair. Fair, that word. It always appeared when consequences arrived. I looked at her. Fair? She glared at me. You got everything. No. I shook my head. I got a grandmother who believed in me. For the first time, she had no response. Attorney Graves gathered the documents. There is one final matter. Everyone looked up. He removed another report. A financial review requested by Mrs. Carter. My stomach tightened. The attorney's expression became serious. The review uncovered unauthorized withdrawals from Mrs. Carter's accounts over a 4-year period. Vanessa went pale. My father's face lost all color. My sister suddenly understood. Grandma had known. She had known everything. The attorney continued. The documentation identifies who made those withdrawals. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. The room felt smaller. He closed the report. Mrs. Carter instructed me to submit these findings only if her final wishes were challenged. Vanessa slowly sank back into her chair. The fight drained out of her. Because she knew. They all knew. The evidence was real. Grandma had prepared for every possibility. Even after death. She was still protecting herself, and protecting me. A few minutes later, the meeting ended. People left quietly. No shouting, no dramatic speeches. Just silence. The silence of people forced to face the truth. As I reached the hallway, Attorney Graves stopped me. Your grandmother was proud of you. I looked away, suddenly, unable to speak. She told me something before she passed. What was that? He smiled softly. She said Ethan spent his whole life believing he wasn't enough. One day he'll realize he always was. My eyes burned. For years I had wanted validation from my parents, from my sister, from everyone. But standing there, I realized something. The only person who had truly seen me was Grandma. And that was enough. I walked outside. The harbor wind was cold. The clouds were beginning to break. Behind me sat a family still arguing with reality. Ahead of me sat a future I never expected. Grandma hadn't left me wealth. Not really. She had left me proof. Proof that kindness mattered. Proof that loyalty mattered. Proof that someone had seen every sacrifice, every phone call, every visit, every quiet act of love. And in the end, that truth was worth far more than any inheritance. The attorney's office sat on the top floor of a downtown building overlooking the river. I arrived early. I always did. Old habit. The receptionist led me to a conference room where my family's was already gathered. My parents. My older sister, Rebecca, 2 uncles, an aunt. Everyone was there for the same reason, Grandma Evelyn's will. The moment I stepped inside, the conversation stopped. Rebecca glanced at me and smirked. The same smirk I'd seen my entire life. The one that always came before a cruel comment. Look who showed up. I ignored her and took a seat near the end of the table. Grandma had been gone for 10 days. 10 painful days. She was the one person in the family who never made me feel small. The only one who listened without judging. The only one who called just to ask how I was doing. I still hadn't accepted that she was gone. Rebecca leaned closer. Her expensive perfume filled the air. Then she whispered so only I could hear, "This is what you deserve." I looked at her. "What?" She smiled wider. Being left out. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She already believed she had won. For years, everyone assumed Rebecca would inherit everything. She was the favorite, the successful one, the daughter who stayed nearby. The daughter who constantly reminded Grandma how much she sacrificed. Meanwhile, I had moved 3 states away, built my own life, started my own career, and according to my family, that meant I abandoned them. The door opened. Attorney Charles Mercer entered carrying several folders. He greeted everyone politely and took his seat. "Thank you all for coming." The room immediately grew quiet. He opened the first folder. "We'll begin with the formal reading of Mrs. Evelyn Harper's will." Rebecca folded her arms confidently. My father looked eager. My mother sat rigidly. I simply listened. The attorney began reading. Specific gifts, family heirlooms, jewelry, donations, small cash distributions. Everything seemed normal. Then came the larger assets. "The family residence shall pass to Rebecca Harper." Rebecca smiled instantly. My parents exchanged relieved glances. I felt nothing. The house didn't matter to me. It was filled with memories, but it wasn't what made Grandma special. The attorney continued. Several investment accounts, savings, personal property. As he read, it became clear that Rebecca was receiving the majority of the estate. I heard her let out a soft laugh. Then she looked directly at me. "There it is." Nobody said anything. She leaned closer. "Told you." I looked down at the table, not because I was hurt, because I was tired. Tired of proving myself. Tired of competing. Tired of being measured against someone who had spent years turning every family gathering into a contest. The attorney closed the document. Rebecca sat back triumphantly. Then he cleared his throat. "However," one word. The entire room froze. Mrs. Harper left additional instructions. Rebecca's smile faded slightly. "What instructions?" Attorney Mercer reached for a sealed envelope. A large cream-colored envelope. The words "final letter" were written across the front, in Grandma's handwriting. My heart skipped. I recognized that handwriting immediately. The attorney carefully opened the envelope. This letter was written 6 months before Mrs. Harper's passing. She instructed me to read it aloud after the will. The room became silent. He unfolded several pages. Then he began. "My dear family, if you are hearing this, then I am gone. I hope you remember me for who I was and not simply for what I owned." I felt my throat tighten. It sounded exactly like her. The attorney continued. "For the past several years, I have paid close attention, not to what people said, but to what people did." Rebecca shifted in her seat. The letter moved on. "I watched who visited because they wanted something, and who visited because they cared." The room felt smaller. My father stared at the table. My mother looked nervous. Then came the part that changed everything. "Rebecca, you came often, but every visit eventually became a discussion about inheritance. You asked about the house, my investments, my savings. You rarely asked how I felt." Rebecca's face turned pale. "That's not true," she whispered. Attorney Mercer continued anyway. "You treated my life like a waiting room for your future." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then came my name. "And then there is Daniel." My chest tightened. Daniel called every week, sometimes every day. When I was lonely, he listened. When I was frightened, he stayed on the phone. When I lost friends, he checked on me. He never once asked what I planned to leave him. Tears filled my eyes. The attorney's voice remained steady. "He treated me like a grandmother, not an investment." Rebecca looked furious now. "This is ridiculous." The attorney ignored her. Then he reached the final page. 3 years ago, I established a trust." The room went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat. "The trust contains assets not listed in the will." Rebecca's eyes widened. My father leaned forward. Attorney Mercer continued reading. "The sole beneficiary of that trust is Daniel Harper." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence felt endless. Then he added the next line. "The trust currently holds commercial properties investment accounts, business interests, valued at approximately $5 million. Rebecca stood up so fast her chair nearly fell. What? The word exploded from her. No. Attorney Mercer calmly removed another folder. Documents, statements, trust agreements. Everything neatly organized. Everything legally executed. Everything signed years ago. Rebecca grabbed the papers. Her hands shook as she flipped through them. This can't be real. It is. The attorney's voice never changed. The trust is valid, irrevocable, and fully funded. My mother looked stunned. My father appeared unable to speak. I sat frozen. Grandma had never told me, not once. Then Attorney Mercer unfolded the final page of the letter. To my family, this decision is not punishment. It is recognition. Daniel gave me something none of you understood. His time, his attention, his kindness. Love is not proven by proximity. It is proven by effort. Rebecca's face twisted with anger. You manipulated her. I looked up slowly. No, my voice was quiet. She simply saw things clearly. The room erupted. Arguments, accusations, voices overlapping. But through all the noise, I kept thinking about Grandma, about our phone calls, about her stories, about the way she always remembered my birthday before anyone else, about how she never asked me to be anyone except myself. Finally, Attorney Mercer raised his hand. There is one more instruction. Everyone stopped talking. The attorney looked directly at Rebecca. Mrs. Harper requested that if anyone challenged the trust, a financial review be released. Rebecca immediately went pale. The attorney opened another file. A thick one. Very thick. I suggest everyone think carefully before proceeding. The room fell silent again. A different kind of silence. The kind that appears when people realize secrets may not stay hidden. Rebecca slowly sat down. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. The meeting ended shortly afterward. People left quietly. No congratulations, no celebrations, just reality. As I walked toward the elevator, Attorney Mercer stopped me. Your grandmother loved you very much. I nodded, unable to speak. He smiled gently. She also left one final note for you. He handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it after reaching the lobby. It contained a single sentence. Daniel, never let anyone convince you that your kindness was weakness. Love, Grandma. I stood there for a long time, staring at those words. Outside, the afternoon sun reflected across the river. For years, I had wanted my family's approval, their respect, their validation. But standing there, holding Grandma's note, I realized something. The person whose opinion mattered most had already given it. And that was enough. The conference room overlooked the river that cut through downtown Cincinnati. I arrived 10 minutes early, old habit. The receptionist checked her list and offered a sympathetic smile. They're all shady inside, Ms. Carter. Of course they were. I thanked her and walked toward the large oak door at the end of the hallway. As soon as I stepped inside, the conversation stopped. My older brother, Ethan, leaned back in his chair. My parents sat beside him. 2 cousins occupied the far end of the table. And hanging in the air was the same feeling I'd known my entire life. I didn't belong. Well, Ethan said with a grin, look who showed up. I took an empty seat. Grandma's will is being read. Why wouldn't I? My mother folded her arms. You barely came around the last few years. I said nothing. There was no point explaining that I'd spoken to Grandma every evening for 4 years. No point explaining that distance wasn't measured in miles. It was measured in effort, and I had been the only one making any. The door opened. A gray-haired attorney entered, carrying several folders. Good afternoon. My name is Richard Holloway. I'll be handling the estate of Eleanor Carter. Everyone straightened, especially Ethan. Grandma had owned several commercial properties, a successful bookstore, investments, savings, enough money to make people greedy. Mr. Holloway opened the first folder. We'll begin with the standard distributions. The room became silent. My father nodded confidently. Ethan looked almost excited. I sat quietly, listening, watching. The attorney adjusted his glasses. To her son, Michael Carter, Mrs. Carter leaves her personal vehicle. My father smiled. To her daughter-in-law, Diane Carter, she leaves her jewelry collection. My mother's smile appeared immediately. To her grandson, Ethan Carter, she leaves the family lake cabin. Ethan practically laughed. There it is. He looked directly at me. I recognized that look. The same one he'd worn since childhood whenever he won something, and I didn't. The attorney continued. To her granddaughters, Rachel and Emily, she leaves equal shares of her investment account. More smiles. More satisfaction. Then Mr. Holloway paused. He reached the end of the page. A strange silence settled over the room. Ethan leaned back. Guess that's everyone. Nobody corrected him. Nobody looked at me. My mother actually sighed, as if the matter was finished. Then Ethan chuckled. Looks like Grandma finally saw reality. I looked up. What reality? His grin widened. That you get nothing. A few uncomfortable glances moved around the table, but nobody defended me. Nobody ever had. This is what happens, Ethan continued, when you disappear for years. I felt heat rising in my chest, not anger. Something older. Something tired. Because they believed that. All of them. They believed I had abandoned Grandma. The truth was much different. Grandma had moved into assisted living 4 years earlier. I visited every weekend. Every single weekend, I drove 3 hours each way. I brought groceries, books, flowers. We watched old movies together. But I never posted photos. Never talked about it. Meanwhile, Ethan posted birthday pictures twice a year and collected praise for being the devoted grandson. Appearances were everything in my family. Reality rarely mattered. Mr. Holloway cleared his throat. We're not finished. The room froze. Ethan's smile faded. The attorney reached beneath the table. Then he pulled out a thick black folder, much larger than the others. Mrs. Carter left specific instructions regarding this folder. Nobody spoke. She requested it be opened only after all standard distributions were completed. My father frowned. What is it, mister? Holloway opened the folder. A letter. Something shifted inside me, because Grandma loved letters. She wrote them constantly. The attorney unfolded several pages. Then he began reading. My dear family, if you're hearing this, I am gone. And if Ethan is already celebrating, please tell him to stop interrupting. The room went silent. Even I almost smiled. Mr. Holloway continued. For years I listened carefully. I watched who visited, who called, who remembered birthdays, who asked about my health, and who asked about my assets. Ethan shifted in his chair. My stomach tightened. The attorney kept reading. Many of you believed Olivia stopped caring about this family. You were wrong. She visited me nearly every weekend for 4 years. My mother's eyes widened. My father looked confused. Ethan visited 6 times during that same period. The color drained from Ethan's face. The attorney continued. Olivia never asked for money, never asked about inheritance, never asked what she would receive. She came because she loved me. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Mr. Holloway turned the page. 2 years ago, I began keeping records. Visitor logs, phone records, correspondence. I wanted facts, not assumptions. He placed another document onto the table. A thick stack. Mrs. Carter documented every visit. The attorney looked around the room. There are 187 recorded visits from Olivia. Then he looked at Ethan. 6 from Ethan. The silence became unbearable. I stared at the table, suddenly remembering every long drive, every hospital appointment, every evening spent helping Grandma organize medications, all the things nobody had seen, because nobody had wanted to see them. Mr. Zolway continued. The family often called Olivia selfish, absent, ungrateful. I know because they said those things in front of me. My throat tightened. Yet, the person they criticized most was the one who showed up consistently. My mother looked away. Ethan couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Then came the final page. The attorney's voice softened. Therefore, I have made one final decision. The room seemed to stop. Every person leaned forward, including me, Mr. Holloway opened another section of the folder. Inside sat legal documents, official documents, signed, stamped, notarized. In 2021, Mrs. Carter established the Eleanor Carter Family Trust. My father blinked. The what? The attorney lifted the paperwork. The trust contains ownership of the bookstore, 3 commercial buildings, and the remainder of her investment portfolio. Ethan sat upright. How much? Mr. Holloway glanced down. Approximately $3.8 million. Nobody spoke. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Then the attorney delivered the final sentence. The sole beneficiary of the trust is Olivia Carter. The room exploded. What? Ethan shouted. My mother gasped. My father said so quickly his chair nearly tipped over. This can't be right, mister. Holloway calmly slid the documents across the table. It is entirely legal. Ethan's face twisted with rage. She manipulated Grandma. I looked at him. For the first time in years, really looked at him. Then I shook my head. No, I loved her. The difference finally mattered. Nobody spoke. The attorney gathered the remaining papers. Mrs. Carter included one final sentence. He looked down, then read it aloud. Love is not proven by being seen at funerals. It is proven by showing up while someone is still alive. The words settled over the room like a weight, heavy, unavoidable. True, tears filled my eyes. Not because of the money, not because of the buildings, not because of the trust. Because for the first time in my life, someone had told the truth. Out loud. Grandma had seen everything, the visits, the effort, the loneliness. The way I had spent years loving people who rarely noticed. She had seen it all. And before she left this world, she made sure everyone else saw it too. I signed the documents with steady hands. Then I stood. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody knew what to say. As I reached the door, I glanced back one final time. Ethan looked stunned. My parents looked ashamed. The attorney simply nodded. And for the first time in years, I walked away without feeling small. Because Grandma had given me something far more valuable than an inheritance. She had given me proof that being overlooked didn't mean being invisible. Someone had been paying attention all along. Here's the story. The estate meeting was held in a quiet conference room overlooking the harbor in Charleston. I arrived 5 minutes early. Nobody seemed happy to see me. My parents sat near the front. My older sisters, Vanessa, occupied the seat closest to the attorney. 2 uncles, an aunt, and several cousins filled the remaining chairs. The moment I walked in, Vanessa smirked. There it was, the same look she'd given me since childhood. The look that said she had already decided who I was, and who I would never become. Well, she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, the family failure finally made it. A few nervous laughs followed. Nobody told her to stop. Nobody ever did. I quietly took a seat near the end of the table. Grandma had been gone for 3 weeks, 3 painful weeks. 3 weeks since I held her hand in the hospital and promised I would be okay. The attorney entered carrying several folders. Good afternoon, he said. I'm Thomas Bennett. Thank you all for coming. Everyone straightened immediately. Money had a way of creating interest, Mr. Bennett opened a file. We are here to review the estate of Margaret Whitmore, my grandmother, the woman who practically raised me, the woman everyone suddenly seemed to love after her passing. Vanessa crossed her legs confidently. She looked completely certain of how this meeting would end. And honestly, so did I. Grandma had been wealthy, several rental homes, investments, savings. I assumed most of it would go to my parents and Vanessa. That was how things worked in my family. Vanessa was the success story. I was the disappointment, at least according to them. Mr. Bennett began reading. Several family members received personal sums, jewelry, furniture, collections, savings accounts. Everything seemed ordinary, predictable. Then Vanessa received Grandma's beach cottage. My mother smiled proudly. My father nodded. Vanessa looked directly at me. Guess Grandma knew who deserved something. The word stung, more than I wanted to admit. Because they echoed years of criticism, years of comparisons, years of hearing that my sister was better, smarter, more successful, more worthy. Mr. Bennett continued. Then he paused. The room became quiet. He turned another page. Vanessa leaned forward. Is that everything? The attorney looked up. No. Something changed in his expression. He reached into his briefcase and removed a thick, sealed folder, much larger than the others. My father frowned. What is that? Mr. Bennet carefully placed it on the table. Mrs. Whitmore instructed me to open this only after the initial distributions were completed. Vanessa rolled her eyes. More legal drama. The attorney ignored her. He broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The moment I saw Grandma's familiar handwriting, my chest tightened. Mr. Bennet unfolded the pages. Then he began reading. My dear family, if you are hearing this letter, I am gone. And if Vanessa is already acting confident, please remind her that patience is a virtue. Several heads turned toward my sister. Her smile disappeared. The attorney continued. I have spent the last 6 years watching my family carefully, listening, observing, learning who people truly are when they think nobody notices. The room fell silent. I have heard people call Olivia a failure. My stomach dropped. That was me. I have heard family members criticize her career choices, her apartment, her income, and her decision not to follow the path others expected. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My mother stared at the table. Mr. Bennet continued reading. What they failed to notice was that Olivia visited me every weekend. A lump formed in my throat. She drove 2 hours each way. She brought groceries. She fixed things around my house. She took me to doctor appointments. The room remained completely silent. She listened when I was lonely. I lowered my eyes. Memories flooded back. Rainy Saturdays, hospital waiting rooms, coffee on Grandma's porch, long conversations about life. Conversations nobody else knew about, because nobody else had been there. Mr. Bennet turned the page. Vanessa often spoke about family responsibility. Yet during the same 6 years, she visited 11 times. Vanessa's face went pale. That's ridiculous, she muttered. The attorney kept reading. I know exactly how many times because I kept records. He opened another folder. Inside were visitor logs, appointment calendars, notes, evidence, years of evidence. My father looked shocked. My mother looked embarrassed. Vanessa looked furious. The attorney continued. Olivia never once asked me about inheritance. My eyes as burned. She never asked what she would receive after my death. She only cared about my life while I was still alive. The room felt smaller, heavier. Every word landed like a stone. Then came the final page. The attorney paused. Even he seemed affected. My family often confused success with character. Nobody moved. They believed income determined worth. Titles determined value. Appearances determined truth. Vanessa stared straight ahead, unable to look at anyone. They were wrong. Mr. Bennet reached into the folder and removed several legal documents. My father suddenly sat upright. What documents are those? The attorney carefully organized them, then looked around the room. In 2020, Mrs. Whitmore established the Margaret Whitmore Legacy Trust. Nobody spoke. The silence was absolute. The trust contains her investment portfolio, her rental properties, and all remaining estate assets. Vanessa blinked. How much? Mr. Bennet glanced down. Approximately $4.1 million. The room froze. My uncle actually gasped. My mother covered her mouth. Vanessa sat perfectly still. The sole beneficiary of the trust is Olivia Whitmore. Nobody moved. For several seconds, nobody even breathed. Then Vanessa exploded. What? Her chair scraped violently across the floor. This can't be real, Mr. Bennet calmly slid the documents forward. It is entirely legal. You manipulated her, Vanessa snapped at me. I stared back. For the first time in my life, I wasn't intimidated. For the first time, I wasn't ashamed. I didn't manipulate anyone. My voice remained calm. I loved her. The room went silent again, because everyone knew it was true. Mr. Bennet adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Whitmore included one final statement. He looked down at the letter, then read the final paragraph. To the family member everyone called a failure. I leave my future because she invested her time in my present. Tears filled my eyes instantly, not because of the money, Not because of the properties, not because of the trust, because Grandma had seen me, really seen me. For years, I had questioned myself, wondered if I wasn't good enough, wondered if the criticism was true, wondered if I deserved the role my family assigned me. But Grandma knew better. She saw every sacrifice, every visit, every act of kindness, every silent moment nobody else noticed. And before she left this world, she made sure the truth could no longer be ignored. I signed the trust documents with trembling hands. Vanessa said nothing. Neither did my parents. There was nothing left to say. The facts spoke for themselves. As the meeting ended, I gathered my papers and stood. The room felt different now, not because I had inherited millions, because the story they had told about me for years had finally collapsed. I walked toward the door, then paused. For a brief moment I looked back. Vanessa stared at the table. My parents looked ashamed. The attorney gave me a small nod, and I realized something. Grandma hadn't changed my life that afternoon. She had simply revealed the truth that had been there all along. The family failure was never the failure. She was just the only one who had shown up when it mattered.